you've reached episode 3 of the podcast series, The Question of God. Has our civilization outgrown God? My name is Sophie Minerva. I'm a professor of philosophy at NLA University College in Oslo. This podcast series is the result of a pedagogical experiment I conducted last year, and 12 episodes have been made. The recording you're listening to is from cafe conversations I had with 4 students about questions related to God during the winter and spring semesters. They are Hiromi, with a Japanese background, Douglas, who is American, Thomas, who is Swedish, and Astrid, who is from Norway. They represented different positions on the God question, that is, theism, atheism, and agnosticism. Our starting point was the book Outgrowing God by the well known atheist Richard Dawkins. The topic this time is what is really real? Let's join this third conversation in the cafe. Welcome everyone to this third meeting. Good to see you again. I'm very pleased so far. I'm happy to see that you're ready to ask questions, to check information, and to challenge each other's thinking. Sometimes even to challenge your own thinking. So, Astrid, you are ready?
Yes, I think so.
Astrid has kindly agreed to summarize what we've talked about so far. Go ahead, Astrid.
Yes, we've talked about constructive discussions and how it's important to know what you mean by the words when you discuss. For example, we've talked about concepts like theism, atheism, and agnosticism, and that these are the 3 basic positions on the question of God. Each of these positions has subcategories. For example, theists can be monotheists, pantheists, or polytheists. Atheists can be neo-atheists or classical atheists. Agnostics can be hard or soft.
Rather strict or moderate?
Yes, sorry, Hiromi, strict or moderate.
Thank you, Astrid. Now we're going to Dawkins' book, Outgrowing God. You've read the first chapter for today. Hiromi, I asked you if you could give us a brief summary of what this chapter is about. Would you like to do that now?
Yes, I have my notes here. Let me see. Okay, one of the main points that Dawkins makes at the beginning of his book is that we should think carefully about how we understand reality. Instead of blindly believing what we have inherited or heard from our family or culture, we should think for ourselves.
That's a good point.
Yes, Thomas, I think that's a good point, although this is also an expression of a particular cultural view. Now, many people think it is important to follow their family beliefs and traditions. Traditions and customs have been passed down through many generations, and the family feels a duty to follow it and to pass it on. It is a deeply held belief.
But traditions and customs can be based on myths, right?
It might, yes. But some people think it's an expression of Western hubris and arrogance to sweep aside family beliefs and traditions so easily. I can understand that. At the same time, I also believe that everyone must make their own choices. It is not enough to just follow the beliefs of your ancestors. You have to come to your own convictions. In that sense, I think Dawkins is right. We are all responsible for what we choose to believe about reality.
Yeah, good.
So Dawkins' starting point is that we must follow logical rules, such as avoiding logical contradictions. A proposition cannot be both true and false at the same time and in the same sense. After describing various concepts of God, he argues that all these concepts contradict each other. Therefore, not all of them can be true.
Yeah, isn't that true?
Yes, Thomas, I think it is true, but for him it seems to mean that if not all of the concepts can be true, none of them are true, which actually is a logical contradiction right there. Anyway, Dawkins argues that there is an objective reality, which means that our beliefs about reality are either correct or incorrect. He believes that everyone should agree that a correct knowledge of reality is the most important thing, more important than the various beliefs and cultural identities we inherit or adopt from others.
For the record, I also agree with that.
Yes, me too. I also noticed some other claims about knowledge. Dawkins writes that, quote, "It is impossible to prove that something does not exist, and we don't know for sure that there are no gods," unquote. But then he goes on to argue that we shouldn't believe in anything or claim to know anything without having a concrete reason to point to. He writes, quote, "Until someone gives us a good reason to believe something, we are wasting our time just believing it," unquote. So far, so good, you might say.
So far, so good.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. But what I find strange is that Dawkins spends the rest of the chapter making many assertions that the reader is expected to just believe because he says so.
You mean he's breaking his own rules? Can you point out an example?
Yes, for example, Dawkins claimed that the monotheism of Christianity and Islam is really polytheism because of their notions of Satan and angels, or the Catholic view of Mary, and the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. I think that is a very particular view. He also asserts that the doctrine of the Trinity was highly controversial among Christians. In what way and to what extent? Then he asserts that the spread of Christianity was a historical accident caused by the Roman Emperor Constantine in the 300s. Really, is that the explanation for the global expansion of Christianity? He asserts that Abraham is only a mythical figure. How does he know? He then claims that Horus and many other ancient gods were said to have been born of a virgin. So the virgin birth of Jesus was copied from other myths. This is also not documented. Do you need more examples?
No, I see your point.
So Dawkins concludes in his book that many people have come up with reasons for believing in gods, or higher powers, or a creative intelligence, and so on, but that it's our task to examine these arguments to see if they hold water. This is a central theme of the book, and also one that interests me personally. So I have to say I was disappointed to find that he actually addresses only a very few of these arguments. This may be a beginner's book, but it seems that there are many aspects of the issue that are not mentioned at all. So this is what I have noted.
Okay, thank you, Hiromi, for that, and for sharing from the chapter, and also for giving us your own reflections. I trust that the part about thinking critically, examining arguments, and seeking the truth is something we can all agree on. Interestingly, you have pointed out that Dawkins does actually not consistently live up to the critical standards he encourages his readers to adopt. Douglas, you have a comment?
Yes. I want to mention that Dawkins is a biologist who often writes about subjects outside of his expertise. Many atheists think he is the atheistic equivalent of a religious fundamentalist who doesn't represent atheism well. But if Dawkins argues badly, it doesn't mean that atheism is unreasonable. I'm a naturalist, but not because of Dawkins. I think he makes a poor philosopher. For example, his arguments against God have been roundly criticized by leading atheist philosophers.
For example,
For example, Thomas Nagel. He said that Dawkins' arguments against the existence of God are unusually weak. Another philosopher, Eric Wielenberg, said that the central argument Dawkins made in another of his books, The God Delusion, was not at all convincing. There are other examples.
but maybe it's because Dawkins doesn't write academic books for professional philosophers, but popular books for ordinary people.
Even philosophers are ordinary people, Thomas.
Popularizing should never be an excuse for presenting bad arguments, don't you think, Thomas?
Well, I don't think Dawkins knows everything, but I trust him to do his research. After all, his main point is that we have to take facts seriously. Here on page 103, he says, quote, "The only good reason to believe anything fact-based is evidence," unquote. I saw him in a TV interview promoting this book, and he said he wanted to get rid of, quote, "anything that's not evidence-based in terms of factual knowledge, things that are based on authority rather than on evidence," unquote.
I hear what you say, but does he practice what he preaches? Hiromi has a good point about Dawkins that he uses his professorial authority to make claims in a way that really contradicts the principles he advocates. In fact, I've already read the entire book, and the factual claims Hiromi listed are never substantiated. We criticize religious leaders when they expect blind faith, but what about scientists like Dawkins?
Let me just point out, Douglas, religious beliefs are not always blind, you know? Many scientists have also religious beliefs. Faith and knowledge are not contradictions.
Okay, everyone, we've used up our time and we have to round up. I'm impressed. You have all good inputs and reflections, I think. You also managed to quickly pick up new information as we speak. We'll continue next week. I hope you are ready for that.
Sure.
Yes, I look forward to this every time.
Good. In the meantime, read the next chapter in Dawkins' book, and then we'll talk in more detail about how we can gain knowledge about something and if that is even possible.
I certainly hope it's possible. I'm a student.
Well, we will see. You have been listening to The Question of God. Has our civilization outgrown God? A 12-episode podcast series from Biocosmos Norway and Damaris Norway. You can find references and resources online. The script by Berge Elliott Benson and Peter S. Williams was adapted from parts of the book Outgrowing God, A Beginner's Guide to Richard Dawkins and the God Debate by Peter S. Williams, who also composed the music. All voices, including mine, were performed using AI. The sound editor was Berge Elliott Benson.